So, I'm 29 years old and I'm a single male. I'm reaching the age whereby most people I know are in relationships. Obviously, there are some single people still at this age, but majority are in relationships. And when you're doom scrolling whilst on the toilet on Instagram Reels, sometimes a video of some cute couple will come up, and if you go for a scroll through the comments, the main comments are people who are upset about their single status. They yearn for a relationship. It's a natural feeling. It's in our DNA to want a partner. However, this isn't the caveman times anymore. Yes, it's in our DNA to want a partner, but is it even worth it in the big 2-5 and beyond? Let's compare the pros and cons in this video. So, pros of a relationship. We have two detailed answers here from AI and Reddit. Not that I needed those to tell me the pros of a relationship, but they help paint the picture a bit better. As you can see, the pros are basically emotional support, physical intimacy, sharing activities together, safety nets, and let's go over those in a bit more detail. Emotional support, yes, obviously having a partner, a best friend is always a pro. I remember last year one of my best friends was constantly venting to me about his depression. I was one of his main outlets to vent to, and it was good chatting to him about it. It was kind of bad timing since I was also cramped studying for my final exam for my studies. But taking 20 minutes out of my day here and there to chat wasn't a huge deal. Now, that's in a situation of being close friends. Most men these days do not have close friends, so a partner would resolve this issue. You can just vent to your partner, or ask them for advice on things, ask for the outside perspective, etc. I have heard a lot of people who say, I wouldn't be where I am without my partner. They're my rock, they're a source of stability in my life. This makes sense, but I will talk more on this later. Next, physical intimacy, self-explanatory. It's a natural feeling. We love to bust a nut. Generally, that's easier with a partner, unless you're Giga-Chad, which most of us are not. Sharing activities together, yeah, so another obvious one, don't need me to tell you why this is beneficial. I have a friend who works odd hours. He's kind of like that unemployed friend who's always free, except he's not unemployed, but he's just always free whenever I have spare time in my schedule to hang out. But it's always more fun having dinner with him versus having dinner alone. Not that I've gone out for dinner alone recently. Sometimes I would go out for lunch alone back in the uni days, and it was always more enjoyable with friends. So obviously it would be even more enjoyable with a partner. Last one, safety net. This mainly refers to finance. If you both rent together and one of you loses your job, the other can pick up the slack in the meantime. If you're single, unless you have some family or really close friends who help you out, you're out of luck. I don't have any friends that I'd financially support if they ran into trouble. I don't work as much as I do to help other people out. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And my friends are the same. Most of us are barely making it in this economy anyway, so how are we expected to help others when we can barely help ourselves? So those are like a rapid fire of the pros of a relationship. I didn't spend too much time on it here since it's kind of obvious. You know why you want a relationship. Now, the juicy part of this video, the cons of a relationship, and is dating even worth it? Here's what ChatGPT and a popular Reddit comment listed. It basically comes down to less free time, more effort, it costs money, and it can introduce a variable factor in your life that can cause huge problems down the track. For most people, this refers to heartbreak. You can have a bad breakup if you have no relationship in the first place, but the lens I look at this from is a financial one, which I will discuss later. Okay, so less free time, obvious. Most of these are obvious, but I need to list them before I get into my other points. So if you're in a relationship, you're spending more time dating and doing activities together. Yes, this can be considered fun, but now there's less me time, which a lot of people enjoy. More effort. If you're in a relationship, I'd hope you're putting in effort. And there's no doubt there are some compromises that will have to be made on both ends, which is effort. As a single guy, I can do whatever I want within reason. I can go eat dinner whenever. If I want to pick up an extra shift at my second job, I can. If I want to go to the gym at this certain time, I can. I have so much flexibility in my schedule compared to those in relationships. But if I was in a relationship, obviously I'd have to put in effort compromising with the partner as well. Costs money. So because I'm a male, I'm expected to pay for dates, which is hilarious since it's not the 1950s anymore. But heaven forbid, I tell a girl she's expected to wear maid outfits and have dinner cooked by the time I get home. But even if you find a girl who isn't a money-leeching parasite, if you split everything 50-50, chances are you're still going on more dates / more holidays than you otherwise would have, which in turn makes you spend way more than you normally would. And the final factor, that is, a variable that can cause issues down the track. I've gone through a breakup before. It left me depressed for like a year. Was not fun. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. But you can go through this issue if you've never had a relationship in the first place. Nobody wants to think about it, but it obviously happens. Like Taylor Swift said, so it's going to be forever, or it's going to go down in flames. Sometimes it can be a mutual civil breakup, but it's usually not like that. But from my point of view, I am more so concerned about the potential financial issues it can cause down the track. Now, this is where the video deviates from your standard video from other creators and turns into a gamification exclusive. This is where I put my thoughts and my point of view. So, if you get into a 5-year relationship, especially at my age being in my late 20s, chances are you will have to move in together at one point or another. Now, if you live together, in my country and in other first world countries as far as I'm aware, if you live together, you're legally considered married in the eyes of the law, a de facto relationship. What happens if you split up? Well, in the eyes of the law, that's called a divorce. What happens in a divorce? You pull your assets together and they're split up. Now, this is of no concern to you if you don't have any assets. It reminds me of this comment on some video I saw once. Someone was like, lots of men get divorced. I worry about this guy. And the reply to the comment was like, he's broke, not like his partner can take anything from him. I have some envy for guys like this. You're allowed to be so much more carefree and reckless in who you choose as a partner, since you don't really have anything to lose, let's be real. Now, the reason I care a lot about this is because I have a lot to lose. I don't know who's new here and who's a regular, but for anyone who's new here, I have a house and a decent bit of money in investments and my bank account too, but stocks and cash aside, I have my own house. Yep, a single 29-year-old male has his own house in Australia. It's not a unit, it's not a 2-bedroom apartment, it's not a 3-bedroom house in a crummy neighborhood, even though all of those are still expensive. I have a 4-bedroom house in a middle-class suburbia-type neighborhood. So, parks, schools, shopping centers, etc. are littered around the area. So it's a nice spot and a decent-sized house, meaning that shit was expensive as fuck. It was recently valued at around $710,000. Now, these real estate websites are obviously not 100% accurate, but it's not like my house will be valued even at $600,000. It's obviously somewhat close to $710,000. This extremely valuable asset is up for grabs in a de facto couple split up. In some extreme cases, you can get kicked out of your own house as a male. Because, equal rights. But even if they don't do this, the value of the house gets put into an asset pool and then divided. Now, even if they don't do a 50-50 split, even if they do something like giving the ex-partner 10% of the assets, if my house is worth $1 million, which it certainly will be in the future at some point, thanks to just the Aussie housing crisis and just the devaluing of fiat currency, I'd owe her $100,000. Not to mention the value of whatever I have in my bank and stock accounts. If I don't have a spare $100,000 lying around, what I'm now forced to do is sell the house to get the proceeds needed to pay her out the $100,000 the court said I owe her. I may have a lot of cash now after selling my house, but now I also have no house, and I need to jump back into the property market at the inflated prices of the future. What a shit deal. Who'd be dumb enough to risk this? A common counter-argument to this is, pick a girl that won't do this. Wow, genius. Why didn't I think of that? Jokes aside, they're saying pick the nice sweet girl versus those party chicks who may be hotter. I get it. The more rowdy chicks are obviously a lot more likely to divorce you or leave you in the future. However, over time, people change. A lot can change in a person in 10 years. It might be something you're not concerned about now, but your future self will kick you for not considering factors like this. I'm 29 at the moment. I'm thanking my 24-year-old self for all the hard work that they decided to do. I'm thanking them for the grind they decided to embark on. I am now reaping all the rewards of all those years of hard work. But I can lose it all. If I get married or have my partner move in with me, which is legally considered the same thing, she now has claim of some ownership of that house if we split. I've used a brief snippet from AI here to demonstrate. I've gone through this stuff in more detail in prior videos, but you should be able to get my point of view from these brief snippets alone, even if my partner didn't make any payments towards my house, which she should if she's living with me. Otherwise, I've basically just taken in the human form of a stray cat. Imagine letting someone live in your house for free in this economy. But even if she made no repayments, courts consider shit like homemaking, caring, as contributing to the house. How arbitrary is this? The vicious divorce lawyers would argue anything she did was homemaking. She sat on her arch leeching off me all day. Oh, but congrats, she swept the floor a few times. They'd consider that as a contribution, and now she is part claim of the house. As I said before, even if it's only 10%, 10% of my expensive-ass house is still a lot of money, and that also doesn't consider what I'd have in my retirement account, stock investments, cash, etc. But gamification, what if she starts to pay half the mortgage? Then surely she deserves half the house if she's paying half, right? Nope. Dumb rebuttal. The reason this is a dumb rebuttal is because I've already done most of the hard yards. The hardest part of getting a house was saving up the down payment and getting the mortgage in the first place, since the bank will want you to have an income that is more than enough to service a mortgage. I could pay for my current mortgage with only my full-time job alone. Money would be tight, but I could afford it. However, the bank would never even consider me for a loan if I only had my full-time job. The hardest part is cracking through those barriers. Once you're in, it's still hard, but not as hard. Now, the down payment. I paid almost $190,000 out of my own bank account towards this house. And that doesn't include any mortgage repayments or utilities that I've paid since. And it also doesn't include all the other outdoor stuff related to my house, such as my fence or concreting my driveway or concreting the sidewalk near my laundry, let alone whatever else I'll be paying for in the future with landscaping. And even more so, that doesn't include the furniture I paid for. When you consider all those things like furniture and concreting, ignoring the bills, I've spent more than $200,000 out of my own bank account on this home. So what is my point? Well, the argument is, well, if you let a girl move in with you who pays half, then she should get half the house. The rebuttal to this is simple. Did she pay half the down payment too? Did she pay half the fencing costs? Half the concreting costs? Half the furniture costs? Exactly. No, she didn't. So isn't that an interesting business idea? Just wait for majority of the costs to be paid for, such as the down payment and the furniture, and then come along and pay half of an already low mortgage. Then now you have part ownership of an asset valued in the several hundred thousands of dollars. For your information, my mortgage repayment is currently $2,305 a month. I only borrowed about $412,000 from the bank for my mortgage since I had such a large down payment, thus meaning I didn't need to borrow as much from the bank. I don't know where you're from, but that's actually pretty low here in Australia. Just look at this. $820,000 for a mortgage, so their repayments would be basically double mine. And look at that, this person has a partner who has a good income too, rather than just leeching. Another one, combined salary of $150,000, so 2 incomes, not just the male busting his ass all day, and an $800,000 mortgage, much higher than mine. Another one, combined salary $270,000, yet again another example of a dual income household. I'll mention the dual income more in a future video, since a common rebuttal to my expectations of a partner is to not worry about income, which I will gladly address in its own separate video. Last one, $858,000 mortgage. Yes, a high as fuck income of $215,000. This screams Sydney or Melbourne. This will also tie into a future video on how high salaries ultimately don't mean much. Despite the fact this person earns way more than I do, a much larger amount of their after-tax income is tied to this mortgage. Now yes, they could still net end up with more money than me, for example, after covering their mortgage repayments, as is shown in this chart. I've used a gross figure of $130,000 for myself. If you've seen my updated income videos, this is what I get before retirement funding, and it also assumes that I don't rent out rooms, which I obviously will be in the future, and it also assumes a baseline level of work that I'm comfortable with. I could always do more, but I could also do less. So the net monthly income of this high roller is quite a bit higher than mine, but they are also more reliant on higher incomes, whereby I could get by with wagey type jobs. You'd still rather be in their position financially overall, since they end up with more money, but living in a lower cost of living part of Australia has its advantages, such as not being so reliant on high-paying jobs. Like I could get by with a part-time job at a warehouse and a part-time job at a supermarket, for example, whereas this other person with a much higher mortgage could not. But again, that'll be another video entirely. I just showed that just to show again, the hard yards are done, the hardest yards are done. I can literally work wagey jobs for the remainder of my life and still be able to afford my house. It's not like I am reliant on my career income to keep me going. Yes, I'd do it tough if I had to resort to that, but I would never need to sell my house, since most of the hard work has been done. This is yet another example to show the value of the asset that's on the line if a relationship breakup happens. And if you don't believe Reddit, which in many cases you shouldn't, here is actual data on the average mortgage in Australia. In my state, it's $639,000, and keep in mind that includes people who've already made many repayments to their home loan. I am well under the average, and my loan only just started this year. But here is the more important part, the monthly repayments. Now these interest rates they've used here are a bit higher than they currently are, but the average back then was $3,807 in my state. My mortgage back then was about $2,500-ish, maybe a bit less, but that's what it was at those rates. Now, if you still don't get my point, what I'm trying to demonstrate is that not only have I managed to get a house on my own, but I have also reduced the loan I needed to take by using an enormous down payment, meaning my monthly cash flow is in a much better position compared to the rest of the state, or the average anyway, which means even if I was willing to let a partner move in with me and for her to pay half the mortgage, I've already done majority of the heavy lifting. So she'd be getting a pretty sweet deal, hey? All the hard work is done. Now it's time to contribute basically fuck all money towards the house and now have claim over it. Nah, you ain't gonna prank me. I'm a CPA and a stock trader. You think I don't know how this money thing works? That is a terrible financial investment on my part. And a terrible financial gamble. And I know about gambling. The only conceivable way, which still won't happen, but the only conceivable way I'd ever let a partner move into my house, mine by the way, no one else helped with the down payment, is if she paid me half the down payment I put forth, along with some extra interest on top of that to make up for the lost income I would have made if I'd invested that money. Since, the stock market has been on a roll the past few years, I could have made a lot of money parking money there versus cutting off a huge chunk of my potential mortgage. Oh, what's that? There's no way you'd expect your partner to pay you upwards of $100,000 to live with you? I'm being a shallow, greedy pig? I'm being really selfish? You'd let her live with you for free? That's fine. But when you spend the best years of your life working a lot to make things easier for the rest of your own life, and then you let someone move in with you and then they take that asset from you in the future, meaning you have to start from scratch at an older age when you should be starting to relax, don't come asking me for financial advice. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's much easier to stop something from becoming a problem than it is to fix it once it is a problem. I always do specific rotator cuff warm-ups in the gym before each upper session. It's much easier to do that rather than fixing my shoulder after I strained it from not warming it up properly. I drive carefully since it's much easier to stop my car from being damaged versus fixing it once it's had its bumper torn off. I prevent my finances from potential harm since that's easier than trying to get that money back later on. Now earlier, I said, who'd be dumb enough to risk this in reference to losing my house? Now, at my job the other week, at my office job, I had a Yugioh stream going on one monitor whilst doing my usual accounting tasks on a separate monitor. This YouTube channel, Con TV, constantly runs a non-stop stream of the Yugioh series. I'm surprised the channel hasn't been taken down yet, since they also posted the 3 Yugioh movies onto their channel too. So, whilst live on this stream, there's an active chat obviously. Now, usually the chat relates to the actual Yugioh show, but naturally politics gets brought up somehow, and other various topics like work and gym. So, I was engaging in this discussion, obviously. I love me a work, gym and politics chat. But one question I was asked is, am I going to have kids? I've circled the relevant chats for you to read, but I'll read it out anyways in case you're only listening to this video and not watching. Someone was asking me like gym and real estate questions, and one time they asked me, are you going to have kids? My response was, I want kids, but I had no partner, no one I am talking to, and family laws in this country are fucked. So I could lose my house if I have a breakup. Need to weigh the risks and see if it's worth the risk. Now this will be yet another video in the future, but I do want kids, since what am I going to do with my life when I'm 40 and beyond? I'll have more than enough money by then. I don't really care much for traveling since I hate packing, unpacking, airports, long plane rides, jet lag. Generally the cons of travel outweigh the pros for me personally. And even then, I wouldn't travel that much, and I have cheap taste. I don't care for fancy cars or expensive food or clothes. So that's where kids come into the question. I'll be more than financially stable enough to pay for kids. However, as much as I'd prefer my life to have kids and a partner in the future, I'd also much prefer to have a cruisy 40s and beyond if it meant keeping my house and assets intact. My life is good as it is. It would be way better with kids, but it would be way worse with no house and alimony/child support payments. It's something I'll dissect in a future video. But continuing on, someone else chimes in and says, smart move, bud. Personally, I wouldn't risk it in today's current political climate. And the original question asker responds to my prior comment and says, love is worth it. So the first comment, he's right, it's a big risk. Unfortunately, the courts are against you as a male, and these modern day women are unbelievably entitled and appear to have no respect for men no matter what they do. That's a rant for another time, lol. But all of this doesn't consider where I sit on the food chain versus where my potential partner sits. For instance, I have a more athletic body type, which is rare at this age if you actually have a career. Yeah, you scroll on Instagram and see all these fitness dudes, but none of them have a career. Maybe they have their fitness brand, but it's substantially easier to keep fit when you're on your own schedule versus someone else's. I need to wake up to an alarm and be at a specific workplace at a certain time. That messes with the quality and quantity of your workouts. Also, when your income relies on being fit, you're more likely to stick to your workout routine and your diet. You try working 7 days a week whilst completing your post-tertiary studies, and let me know how much of a priority that gym becomes. I'm not ditching study sessions to hit legs, I can tell you that. And I'm not calling in sick just so I can get another chest workout in. My income/career relies on my education/studies/work experience, not how big my chest is. Point is, I'm fit, which is rare if you actually go outside and touch grass. It might not be so rare if you spend a lot of time on Instagram Reels with all the fitness content there is. Compare this to women. How many women over the age of 25 do you know who are fit? I can tell you basically all of them have gained weight, even the former gym chicks. Some of them still look good, but most of them looked better before the weight gain. Same applies to men too, but I'm not dating men, so I don't care if they get fat. If anything, I prefer it since it makes me look better, lol. So, not only would I be risking my house in a long-term relationship, but I'd also be risking it for some chubby chick? All whilst I'm still fit? Huh? What kind of shit deal is this? So all of this whole risking your finances for a partner doesn't even consider the fact that, is your partner your looks match? Or are you basically settling for someone because there's no one else? Or are you really desperate for children? Or she seems nice enough? That will be yet another separate video, but to cap off this point, as arrogant as it sounds, it's legitimately a shit deal for me. Risking an asset, my house, that basically 0.1% of men my age have, and for what? Chances are, some fat ran-through chick? Horrible deal. This has been the worst deal in the history of trade deals, maybe ever. Here's a trade offer. I receive some fat ran-through chick, and she receives a fit guy with his own house. But anyway, that commenter responding to me, saying love is worth it. Is it really? Because there are absolutely guys out there who aren't in shape, nor do they have a house, and yet they'd still receive the same amount of love as I would. Again, arrogant, but am I wrong? Prove me wrong. Why should I get the same level of treatment for 10 times the work of the average man? I'll address this whole situation in yet another separate video. That aside, consider what the comment is basically implying. Hey, it's worth risking your house for someone else. No, the fuck it's not. This is the problem with these discussions. Because so few people actually own their own house, there's not many people who understand. You will usually have people who aren't even close to owning their own house making remarks such as this. You're allowed your own opinion, of course, but you simply don't get it. It's absolutely not worth the risk. Love is not worth it because plenty of other people have love without risking such valuable assets. How come they get love but don't have to risk a $710,000 in counting asset? Just because I have that, does that make my partner entitled to it? Because love? Huh? And all of this doesn't even consider the fact that, personally, my life is good. I'm aware a lot of you guys yearn for a relationship. It would enhance your life drastically. It would enhance my life too, but I'm still chilling without a partner. I enjoy the smaller things in life. For example, lately, I've finished some days at my office job at 2 p.m. because I do longer hours on other days. I go to the gym for about 1.5 hours, drive home, shower, then do a bunch of stuff around my house. Yard work, chores, meal prep, go for a walk around the neighborhood, and then, as mentioned earlier in the video, there's a Yugioh stream going. So I just chill in my bedroom with Yugioh on whilst I either check the stock markets or work on a YouTube video, or both. I'll do that until bedtime, and then I got to get up and go to work the next day. It's not on the same level as a nice holiday in Bali or something, but it's still great, and I got plenty of other areas I can progress in the game of life still, so I'll still have something to do for years to come. Now, as chill as the example I used is, it'd be better with a partner. But again, the long-term risk, is it worth it? You could argue, well, if she doesn't live with you, then this risk isn't a problem. Correct. However, it's unlikely that a relationship would last at this age and beyond if you're not living together. She could also have her own house, which would also resolve many of the potential issues, but that's incredibly unlikely. A potential remedy is to go halves on a separate house with her, using the equity in my current house as part of my down payment, but that doesn't solve the issue of a split up requiring me to pool my assets into the asset pool, which would include my main house. Yeah, sure, you can do like corporate trusts or put it under your mum's name, which would only work if I wasn't living in the house, but I'm not sure how that works if I've used equity from that house for another one. And even so, I shouldn't have to resort to those measures. I should be simply allowed to keep what is mine, but I will delve into that more in a future video. All of this is just something to think about. The video title is a question after all. Is dating worth it? Well, all of this is just fuel for thought. So, second last point before I finish this video, another point for thought is the me time you lose. I did talk about it earlier, but I'll delve into it a bit more. Here are some examples courtesy of Reddit. I won't read all this since it's not that important, but basically this guy's saying now that he's single, he's had way more time to work on himself. The examples he uses are meal prep, workout, study, and hang out with friends. So basically, gym, career, and social life. Well, you can work out with your partner, you do know that, right? My assumption is they were a non-gym couple. He went through a bad breakup, example. The woman says something along the lines of, I just need more time and space, or some shit. She thinks she's Galactic Boss Cyrus going after Dialga and Palkia or something. And then she's with a new guy a week later, and now bro is on his villain arc, hence the gym thing. Study is generally something you do on your own, and unlike a relationship, your education can't leave you. You will always have that trade qualification or that degree. No such guarantee exists with a relationship. You can get certain licenses revoked, of course, but your educational qualification is way more stable than your relationship. This is yet another thing to think about. Are you done with your enhancements to your life? Example, are your studies done? Do you have enough work experience to make yourself valuable in the labor market? Example, if you work in big corporate world, often as a junior, you'll need to do unpaid overtime whilst you're new. Generally, you got to suck it up for a few years until you have enough experience, network connections, etc., so you can jump ship to a job that has better work-life balance. Perhaps if you're about to start a grad job, maybe it's not the most ideal time to start a relationship too. It can obviously work, but it's usually harder. Even so, if you just worked 80 hours at the office in a week, maybe you want to just sleep, but if you've got a date planned, too bad, you got to go on that, or your relationship might start having issues. I was actually having this conversation with a friend a while ago. He was suggesting I start dating around, or at least getting back on the dating apps, or shoot more shots with girls at my wagey job or at the gym, but I told him I had stuff to do. Well, like, stuff to do over the recent years. And for the past 5-ish years, 4 of them have involved my 2 jobs, obviously, but also my CPA studies, my post-tertiary studies. Once that is done, my career is basically sorted. Most accounting jobs require this, and I also have some experience. So now I basically don't really need to worry about my career getting kick-started. So that wasn't an ideal time to date, since I would lose study time. I could have worked less, but then I wouldn't have gotten into real estate as early, which means I may have missed the boat for that specific region where I live. Story for another time. The point is, if I was dating from 2021 to 2024, it would have cost me some study time, and I already failed one of those units twice. So even if I had less study time, chances are there would be more fails sprinkled in there, which means I still might not even be done with my studies as we speak. And in 2025, now my studies are done in the current timeline, but now I have a lot of stuff related to my house. Example, I mentioned earlier, I was doing a lot of yard work and I've still got a lot more to do. Yeah, I guess she could help me with that, but then that becomes her contributing to the household, which could give her some ownership of my house in the future. So, yeah, no thanks. So anyway, yet another point to think about. The enhancements to your life in other areas. Can you make these with a relationship? You can obviously still progress, but can you progress at the rate you want? I can tell you, if I had a relationship in the past 4.5 years, I wouldn't have been able to complete my studies or have had enough money for my own house. Now, yeah, we could have bought a place together, would have been much easier on my finances, but now I am one relationship breakup away from not having a house. Since obviously, if you two bought together and you split up, one has to buy the other person out, or you both have to sell and split the profits, which is fair enough if you went 50-50, but in my case, I went 100-0. So I'm not doing any of this buy someone out or split the profits bullshit, because I went 100-0, not 50-50. On top of this, got the studies, finances, and the house, but there's also this YouTube channel and my stock market knowledge. I could still have the stock market stuff since most of that is listening to videos whilst driving, showering, etc., but I would have had way less videos on this channel, if any. 2,280-ish subscribers is nice and all, but in most cases people would rather have a relationship. Again, something to think about. Stuff like this, like for example, everything I've been able to do, it's not really possible when you're dating. You can definitely have some of what I have, but not all of it. You could have also just, I guess, made better content so you wouldn't have like 240 plus videos on your channel and only a bit more than 2,000 subscribers to show for it, but anyway. I'd also probably be less fit. Yeah, I wouldn't date a chick who isn't a gym chick, but I'd definitely be eating out more often and probably have less gym sessions, since, to be honest, I'd rather hang out with a cheeky babe than go to the gym. Now lastly, this person is making an argument that a relationship doesn't cost as much money, which was a negative we went over before. This person, I'm assuming they're a male, is correct. Relationship costs are person specific. Some chicks want expensive ass gifts, miss me with that shit, but some don't. Bring them my way. But saving costs, absolutely correct. My housing costs, including bills, insurances, etc., work out to be like $2,700-ish a month. If I split this with a partner, 50-50, it'd only cost me $1,350. I mean, yeah, maybe energy costs would be a bit higher with another person in the house, but it'd still be cheaper than paying everything myself. So yes, yet another thing to consider. Relationships can actually save money. This is something I've seen a lot lately, actually. Whenever someone complains about the cost of real estate, or the cost of their rent is gobbling up too much of their income, or their mortgage repayments are getting a bit much because they lost their job and now they have to take a lower paying job, a common solution suggested is to find a partner and split the costs. Getting into a relationship to ease your financial burden probably isn't the best way to end up in a long-term happy relationship, but it's suggested for a reason, because it works. Earlier in the video, I mentioned the whole females and their finances situation. This point I just mentioned will tie into that same video, like the video on, well, I want a partner with money, why is that such an unrealistic ask? So it can ease your cash flow by splitting everything with a partner, but then obviously later down the track, you're one relationship breakup away from not having the house. Keep in mind, these opinions are from a guy who has his own house and am single. Obviously, I am biased, but if you think about it financially, you'd always refer back to the main question. Is this dating thing worth me risking my house? Especially when you consider what's out there for you in the dating market. So that'll do it for this video. If you think this video was kind of all over the shop, that's because it was. I decided I was overdue for a video on the dating market, and I didn't really have a specific direction, so I just let my thoughts flow and I wrote a script over several days. So there may have been a bit of inconsistency with it, but hopefully you get my point. There are pros and cons to dating. I focused mostly on the financial cons, since that's where most people need to spend more time thinking. I mean, you don't need me to make a whole video on the pros of a relationship. You already know what they are. Companionship, sexual stuff, sharing experiences, which is why I barely talked about it in this video. It's common sense. But not enough dudes are aware of the financial risks. It is becoming more known these days, but there are still too many men getting fleeced in family courts. So information such as this needs to be said. If all men knew about this, then no men would be getting wrecked in courts. And I know in my personal life, there are many dudes who are living with their partners. Things are fine for now, but I'll be keeping tabs on them, and we'll see where they're at in 5 years' time. So what are your thoughts? Is dating worth it for you? Would you risk your own assets? Have you done enough in your life to the point where you've now got a solid base and now you've got more time to date? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. That is all.